greetings from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, India. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share our initial insights from a participatory action research project, specifically with respect to ethical adaptation to climate change. This project has been initiated as part of the Transforming Universities for a Climate Change project, as the Climate U network. The leadership of this project is taken by University College London. We are still in the initial stages of this particular participatory action research project. We are focusing on two important practice arenas. One is towards promoting institutional mechanisms to strengthen climate resilient seeds and agriculture practices in a rural setting in Tamil Nadu. We are also focusing towards strengthening the built environment from a green perspective and a circular economy perspective. And towards this, we at the Center for Livelihoods and Social Innovation, through our students and faculty, are partnering with two social enterprises or startups that have been established by two of our alumni, and the other stakeholders being grassroots level collectives, farmers, self-help groups, etc. The objective of this particular action research is threefold. We are envisaging to enable the grassroots level actors to develop their adaptive capacities and entrepreneurial capabilities to deal with livelihood and environmental uncertainties at the local level. We are also believing that this project would strengthen alumni networks and organizations in facilitating climate action at the grassroots level, especially with marginalized populations. We as social work educators also believe that it is very important to promote awareness and develop capacities amongst youngsters, and to begin with our own social work students, we are working with them to enable their capacities not only to understand what is the context emerging out of climate change, what is climate change, but also to develop appropriate skills of participatory action research in bringing about transformative change. This flowchart explains the pathways that we are envisaging here in terms of partnerships and collaborations. We at the Center for Livelihoods and Social Innovation, through both faculty and students, are partnering with Huga Foundation that works with grassroots level farmers in terms of seed keepers, farming households, school children, youth, etc. towards climate resilient farming. And the second social enterprise being goodliving.eco Foundation that works towards strengthening the built environment, making it climate resilient, and the approach being to work through women self-help groups and other collective actors. The guiding framework for this action research is the adaptive innovation framework, which we will be explaining to you later. And we believe that the insights gaining from this localized context will be fed into the larger Climate U network, and it will be a space for mutual learning among different stakeholders at the global level as well. Now let me explain to you what we consider as adaptive innovation and what the model is. Adaptive innovation refers to people-centered innovation processes by which the local community actors collectively analyze their own situations in the context of social and ecological transitions, forge constructive partnerships with other relevant actors to dialogue, ideate and develop working models and implement and critically observe, reflect, and validate their adaptive strategies to the emergent context. These processes are situated, reflective, context specific, developmental, and committed to the values of care, justice, and solidarity. Now, when we talk about here community actors, in this particular project, we have three important actors who are involved in this in different ways of adaptive innovation. The students themselves are a group of actors who are also analyzing their own situations and then trying to develop their own goals and action frames to reach their goals. The social enterprises, which are startups and which are trying to work with communities and they are relatively new, they become another set of actors, and then the community, local community members themselves become another set of actors. And the approach of action research varies differently for each of the stakeholder, though they all collectively are entangled in the same practice space. This is what is the larger adaptive innovation model. Let me take a few minutes to explain to you what this model is. At the core of adaptive innovation lies the values guiding ethical adaptation. These are the values of justice, care, and solidarity. However, as practice situations vary from one country to another, from one region to another, the situatedness and the historical context of the participant actors also vary, and some other value systems might gain prominence and priority in that practice context. So, that flexibility is being there, but when we talk about ethical adaptation, we as practitioners, we need to consistently reflect what are our core value systems that is guiding the whole action or towards climate mitigation or climate adaptation. So, it is in that sense we need to identify the core values guiding our practice, and for this action research we believe it is justice, care, and solidarity. I will explain it to you little bit more after explaining the whole model. The second aspect is that the different pathways towards adaptive innovation. We begin with a situation analysis of the context. Who are the participants, who are the vulnerable groups, what is happening to them, and how we can mobilize them, what are the various ideas that they are presenting to us, what are their stories telling us. Storytelling is an important pathway here, and what are their stories telling, what kind of innovation platforms are very important here to develop appropriate solutions, and when you ideate, how can that idea or that image transformed into a visual understanding, and that is where action framing comes, the fourth step. So, from an idea you need mental images or mental models or prototypes that needs to be emerged. In design thinking, people do talk about prototyping, but in complex circumstances and where the eco-social world is even more dynamic, prototyping may not be the only pathway. There will be different ways of articulation ideas into practice, and once ideas are transformed and articulated into images and practice, then we could go for piloting, and then comes the phase of emergence. Here unlike many other livelihood models or adaptation models, we don't stress on sustainability as an outcome here, because sustainability in itself in a complex system is going to be very dynamic and with its own ups and downs. So, we would like to use the terminology called emergence here, because emergence shows us the dynamics of complex systems where climate change impacts happen, and we might be also be prepared for both intended and unintended consequences in building synergy across systemic spaces. So, that is very important. That is why we focus on emergence. So, situation analysis to micro mobilization to dialogic ideation to action framing to piloting to emergence. This is the pathway that we realize for adaptive innovation model. This is also characterized by reflective practice, where reflection for action, reflection in action, and reflection on action become the key traits of us practitioners. So, at each phase of our research, we are involved in what is this meant, what is this project meant to be, what should we do, what is happening while we are engaging with practice, and after our whole practice phases are over, what has happened. This kind of a reflection is very important here. And finally, actor interfaces becomes an important theoretical construct here for us to understand how, when different actors, be it the students, be it the social entrepreneurs, be it the community actors, be it the educators, be it the government or the market, when diverse actors with different values, interests, knowledge and power come together, what are the kind of social discontinuities that is emerging, or what is the scope for social innovation to emerge. So we are also taking insights from Norman Long's understanding of actor interfaces, but we are not restricting it only to social discontinuities. We are also saying that when diverse actors with different values, interests, knowledge and power come together, it can also lead to social innovation. So it is this theoretical framework that also helps us towards reflective practice, reflective analysis, and this is the whole model as such. Now we are in the beginning of the situation analysis phase while we are implementing this particular model, and just to showcase about the importance of what we are doing, this is one quote from one of the farmer. She said that we get the seeds from nearby fertilizer shop. This time we got seeds 3 times. The first time we bought it, it did not germinate. There was no water. Second time seeds got burnt because of the heat. And third time it is started growing well. Perhaps the monsoons came on time or whatever it is. But in this whole process, we lost around 4,000 rupees just to buy seeds. This is the life of a farmer. So the aspirations, similarly we could see also when people are asking for built environment, safe housing, etc., where they say that, but what we understand is that people want homes, but historically they are marginalized, and so they are staying in locations where flood is more prone, erosion is more prone. But on the same time, when we start discussing about safe housing, the basic thing that comes is that they don't have ownership over safe lands. They don't have pattas over particular land, and how will they then get into safe housing? So these are the dilemmas also that we are facing in the during the situation analysis phase itself. But what is more important here, and today's presentation, is that I would like to emphasize that we need to stick on to ethical adaptation to climate change and the core values that is going to guide our practice. When we talk about justice, we are not only talking about distributive justice, we need to also address the structural issues or structural justice concerns, be it in the terms of caste, gender, race, or any other forms of ethnicity or marginality. We need to look at justice even from an historical perspective. So the second element that is very important is care, and it is the relationships of care and reciprocity and shared conversations, and that becomes very important when we talk about climate action. And a bridge between both care and justice is caring solidarity, where networks of trust and relationships needs to be built. Collective action becomes very important. Collective action, be it among women's groups or youth groups or even elderly groups or community collectives, etc., needs to be encouraged and worked upon. So justice, care and solidarity. Here comes the intersectional lens. Here comes the intergenerational lens. I work with the fishing communities, and I realized that the local knowledge system that guided the elderly fishing communities towards predicting climate change and responding to climate change are not always transferred to the youngsters, because they diversify their livelihoods to new forms of technology and practice where those local knowledge systems may not be relevant. And so you could see that the chaos that is emerging even when knowledge gaps emerge. So when we talk about ethical adaptation, we also need to talk about intergenerational relationships as well as interspecies. When we talk about climate change impact, we are not only talking about human beings, we are talking about non-humans as well. So we need to look at these relationships, and ethics has to be guided by tying these knots together. So with this, let me end my presentation here. Thank you for your time and patience.